So we're starting over again. I don't know what it is with this recorder. I'm half tempted to buy another one because every time we try and use the intro music through the microphones, it locks up. And I guess it recorded everything, but the counter stopped moving, so bang, we're starting. All right, we told you last week that we were going to do Blacklist and a new section of the dailies, but instead I got to burr up my ass about watching one of my favorite movies, The Dancer Upstairs. Now, apparently we recorded 20 minutes, so we're going to start all over, and it might make for a better show just because the first go-around, I kind of went through and was detailing most of the movie. It's one of my favorites just because I like the fact that it's set in the early 2000s in South America, which it's not necessarily a backwards culture, but this was definitely filmed before the tech revolution. Mm-hmm. So everything is cell phones and old laptop computers, and it's set in a unnamed Latin American country. I'm going to give you the synopsis again. I'm trying to do this without attitude because I'm really angry at this recorder. I hate that thing doesn't work. It's like every other time it does this.
Mm-hmm. It does it a lot.
And I updated the software and everything. Mm-hmm. Fucking. Anyway, I'm gonna actually, before I go through the storyline, I'm gonna tell you about the movie itself. Javier Bardem plays Agustin Rejas. Laura Morante plays Yolanda. Juan Diego Bodo plays Sucre. And Elvira Minguez plays Leosa. There's a few other actors in here. I don't know if you know Latin cinema, you might recognize them, but I did not. It was originally written by Nicholas Shakespeare. He wrote the book, and then he did the screenplay. John Malkovich, this was his directorial debut, which we were talking before this thing went haywire on us, was his, as a debut, super ambitious. Mm-hmm. Set in another country, has a not overly complicated political backdrop, but if I was directing a movie, I wouldn't start with something like this.
No. It's an amazing feat to have made this movie.
Story of Detective Agustin Rejas, a man clinging to the hope of an impossible love in an impossible world, tracking Ezekiel, a delusional anarchist who incites the downtrodden masses to join in his brutal revolution against the fascist government in their unnamed Latin American country. Rejas finds solace in his sense of self-respect, and the joy of his daughter, that his daughter and wife bring him. Then he meets Yolanda, his daughter's soulfully beautiful ballet teacher, a woman who sparks long-forgotten passions and represents all that is good and all that is corrupt in their troubled country. But she, who appears to be a shelter from the storm, may in fact actually be the storm's eye. Ultimately, as the revolution intensifies and the net closes around the hunter and hunted alike, the dancer's truth will prove to be as elusive as the revolutionary's cause and the detective's peace. I love these synopses that don't. It's almost like verbal gymnastics at the end, so you don't. There's no spoiler to it. Mm-hmm. We were saying earlier, I'm going to try not to give any spoilers. It's really difficult because this movie is 20 plus years old. If you haven't seen it yet, you should. So we're going to try not to spoil it. But again, like the farther back a movie goes, the harder it is not to spoil it.
That's true. This was from a long time ago.
So, Louisa, I'm sorry, we're recapping this, but I love talking about like a movie again and then backing it up just because it sparks the mind. It makes you think of things you haven't necessarily considered. So we had said that at the intro, Nina Simone is playing in a car, or the recording is playing in a car of some migrants who are driving all night through this unnamed Latin American country, and you get the sense that one of the passengers, someone with glasses, is kind of the ringleader. We found it funny that nobody in this car, aside from this person with the glasses, speaks English. And they're listening to Nina Simone, who is a cultural
Civil rights.
a civil rights leader in America, or she was kind of one of the cornerstones for it. Is she's about to sing her song "Time," and before this song, she talks about how time is a great dictator, and nobody can really understand what it is. And this conversation clearly means something to the person in the car with the glasses, but the migrants don't necessarily know what she's saying.
Yeah.
So what message is being communicated? Is it really being communicated to the people in the car or just to the one person in the car? When we finally meet Javier, before we meet Javier Bardem, this truck comes to a checkpoint or a...
Yeah, checkpoint, a police.
Yeah, police checkpoint. There's one guard at the checkpoint whom they run over inexplicably. And all I can assign to this is that they are... there's some kind of revolutionary, or there's some kind of anti-governmental thing. But I think they're aware that they're out in the middle of nowhere. There's only one cop there, so if they run them over...
No one's going to know for a long time.
They get to Javier Bardem's checkpoint. It's just him and one other cop.
In a little hut. A little office building.
Yeah, barely. You even get the impression that he probably lives there. He probably sleeps there.
Yep.
And he has to interview the guy with the glasses. And while he's doing the interview, his partner, the other cop, takes a bribe from some of the other passengers. And this seems to not sit well with the guy with the glasses, because he comments about it, but he doesn't do anything about it. But it clearly irks him a little bit. And you find out that Rejas has previously been an attorney.
Yep.
And now he's taking this...
Lower paying.
Yeah, he's becoming a cop. He's going from white collar to a blue collar role within the government. And I guess that, you know what, now that I think about it, that kind of makes you, it almost puts a highlighter on how he must be a moral man.
Yeah.
Because he's willing to go from private practice as being an attorney
down to lower, not to higher.
Yeah, but he's staying within his. He's not changing fields entirely. He's staying within the law, but he wants to affect it from a more from the ground level. Because he says at a few parts in the movie, I'm trying to find a better way of practicing the law, a more honest way of practicing the law. Like, well, what, you might be the only moral and just person in this. I mean, not in this story, because he forms his team are ostensibly good people. But what I find funny is you find out later that the person they're tracking, this counter-revolutionary, or I guess, I don't know if they'd be counter-revolutionary, but he's a revolutionary. Doesn't like to be photographed. We'll get to that in a minute. But back to the checkpoint. So he has this person remove his glasses and take a photo, and he has to go back. Rejas has to go back into the hut to fill out some more forms. And while he's in there, the guy in the glasses gets back in the truck and just drives away. And Rejas doesn't have the means of the personnel or anyone to like stop them.
There's nothing he can
and
do.
He just says to his partner, "So what the hell are you doing?" His partner doesn't even react whatsoever. I mean, they just drive off. And what I was telling you earlier was that even after I saw the movie, I didn't understand. I thought that was a completely separate vignette from the rest of the story. I didn't know how the two of those were connected.
Yeah.
But you find out later that person is paramount to the rest of the story. So Rejas gets promoted, but it takes years for him to ascend the ranks. And ultimately he gets... one other thing I left out. There have been terrorist attacks throughout this country, but they're so removed from the rest of like the cities. There's not like, there's not like CNN down there. There's not social media. So people start blowing up government buildings or where township halls are. They start blowing those things up. And it takes months, if not years, for that news to filter into the Capitol.
Yep.
And Rejas's boss has now tasked him. He's brought all this to light and said, "All right, this has been happening around the country. I want you to find out what's going on." So Rejas goes out with his partner. You get your phone up. What was the guy's name? I had
Sucre.
Sucre. He goes out with his Sucre is kind of a. You reminded me of one of the passengers in that Keanu Reeves movie Speed.
Oh.
Because he had, he's always wearing, he's got kind of a, almost like a bowl cut, thick black hair, and he's always wearing a leather jacket from a high school.
Yep.
And they
he's a very normal looking person.
He's a normal looking undercover cop.
Yep.
They start seeing all of these like revolutionary sayings or signs nailed to or tied to dead dogs that have been draped around the city. And this starts Rejas just trying to track the meaning of these and who would be putting them up. And it becomes, he figures out slowly that this is a communist. I don't want to. It's like a communist revolution. It's a democratic country they live in, but the revolution is socialistic in nature. And what we had said before this goddamn thing stopped working was that you see a lot of this at universities. You see a lot of. You see a lot of socialism and communistic thoughts that are, tendered or, what's the word I want?
I don't know. I was thinking developed. But.
Yeah, developed or nurtured. Because in the environment of a university, free thought is allowed to be examined, right? Like that, what you're living in right now is there is no ideal, at least not in modern society, even older societies. I mean, the conversation around what is perfect it's a difficult thing to have because what's great to you is hell to somebody else. And Ezekiel, who the terrorist comes to be known as, it becomes clear he is college educated and maybe a professor and refers to himself as the fourth flame of communism.
Kind of creepy.
Yeah, recruits young people because they are
young and impressionable,
malleable. I found the just the approach that the narrative took about how Ezekiel went around recruiting, because he had, if you look at the storyline over the course of 5 years, he had a lot of followers. Mm-hmm. And in the movie, he had
It was like everybody in the town. That's how I felt. Sometimes I would think, watching this movie, oh, this person's not on his side. And then I'd be like, oh, no, they are.
Yeah, it's like you don't really know the tenor of the common man. Mm-hmm. You know how happy or unhappy they are with politics, or with how their corrupt government is impacting them on a day-to-day basis. Mm-hmm. Like in America, you hear people grumbling about it, and then there's a different caliber of person who is so viscerally affected by it that they're, they're out marching, or if you go to a deeper level, they're building bombs or like planning to shoot judges or whatever. Mm-hmm. So during this process of trying to track down this terrorist, Rejas meets his daughter's ballet teacher. I keep wanting to call her Claudia. What's her name? Yolanda. Claudia, Yolanda.
I mean, yeah, I can see.
It's all exotic. Mm-hmm. I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, and I'm not going to give the spoiler, but without giving the spoiler, what you find out at the end. You told me this before, but like maybe you might want to comment a little bit on that. What her connection was to everything. Was it your level?
The dance teacher?
Your level of surprise. Did you see this coming, or?
Oh no, I definitely didn't see the end of the movie coming. I'm very.
Yeah, I know this is going to be tough for you because you don't want to say who's affiliated with what, but
I have to say, I was like, there's two things. One is that I was very surprised, backing way up, that I didn't know anything about this whole story or having heard anything about it. We commented earlier in the podcast that we were trying to record that this was very easy to understand the political goings on of the city and the people and what was happening. And
I compared it to Star Wars, like the first three Star Wars movies. They were talking about the Imperial Senate and the trade alliance,
and it's
I didn't know.
Very confusing. I mean, I don't know how anyone understands that. I mean, obviously people do, but
I've watched a couple of those movies like twice, and like even after the second viewing, I'm like,
nope.
Who's the good guy? Who's the bad guy? I mean, like, it's just messy. And this, since you don't really get a vibe from the actual people, you really only get the perspective of the government and Rejas, he's like a good man trying to execute the will of the government, assuming that the government isn't taking advantage of the entire populace. Mm-hmm. But Ezekiel and his people, they are communists, and they're lashing out violently against. It's not just, they lash out not just at governmental figures. There's an assassination attempt on an admiral or a military general, mm-hmm. But there's also just places of private business that are bombed. And civilians who are bombed. I'm like, I don't see how that gets the population on your side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's actually really good commentary. I feel like
of your own, if you're trying to incite a revolution, you typically, I mean, for as limited as my knowledge is on geopolitical, behavior, mm-hmm. I would think you would go after the establishment. You'd go after government buildings. You'd go after government employees and stuff like that. But Ezekiel was just blowing up fruit stands and restaurants, and then he did target, like that admiral or that naval officer.
Yeah. I think maybe more than it being a general, like, blowing this building up, getting rid of this person here, it's almost like it's more personal, because he's come into this town where I was under the impression that he didn't know anybody, or maybe in the movie they didn't show how he gets a lot of people on his side.
Yeah, that's an interesting. How did he recruit? You would think because what they say about his profession. You remember how they found him? They found him through that professor.
Oh, yep,
So that would have been like he would have been this person would have been in a position to recruit.
That's a good point.
Based off what he did, but I mean, a lot of these people, if they were, of student age, you can assume that he can relate to people like that very well. It's almost like a pedophile. Like they can groom young people. They can. What are you dissatisfied with? You know why your life isn't the way you want it to be. It's because of these people. And they continue to do this to you. That this narrative of your life isn't the way you want it because people are acting against you.
And then here, let me help you fix this, and this is how I'm gonna help you fix it, and you don't know because you're so like far down. I don't know what
you're
you
young
say.
And impressionable, and
and you're like, sure, I'll take help with my life because I'm not happy. So maybe this person can make me happy.
I think that, regardless of what the agenda is, whenever people are radicalized, it's usually young people. And it's young people who have nothing to lose.
And the people in this movie were all over the map age-wise. He used, 5-year-old kids, I want to say. Yeah, to carry out his plans. And
you would think he just lied to him and said, hey, I'll tell you what, I'm playing a prank on somebody.
Think so.
Take this, go in there and say, he says a chant, praising Ezekiel, and then blows the building up. I'm trying to remember what, as Javier Bardem is chasing down Ezekiel, it becomes obvious that I'm going to take a little bit of umbrage with what the Wikipedia article said about his only solace is his daughter and his wife. I think it's pretty much just the daughter. Because I think, though, like we had said the other day, the wife is totally beauty obsessed.
Totally. And she was a very interesting character, yeah.
Yeah, it's just kind of vacant.
Very.
And I know there was maybe a second or two where she was just talking about magazines and wanting to get a nose job, and he just kind of rolls his eyes like, this isn't a relationship has a ton of depth to it.
No, there's not. And speaking on that note, I felt really bad for the daughter because I felt like her parents were so busy with, and I'm not making excuses for anyone any which way, but Javier Bardem's character was so busy with his police work and wrapped up in this case, if you will, which, I would expect that, but he didn't really, I don't like to say this, but he didn't really have time for his daughter. And he couldn't really,
you can tell he's not somebody who doesn't give a shit.
No, I think he was really sad by that. Yeah. And he would come home and he'd be like, I devoted no time to my family. And then on maybe another hand, the wife, well, there's no relationship between the wife and the husband, but
not really.
They live in the same house, but they just don't see eye.
Here's what I'm thinking about. You remember at the end when he goes to see his daughter in her recital? The wife looks back at him through the glass lovingly.
That's true.
I don't think she's. I think she's so vacant.
They're not as separate as I'm making it sound.
I don't think that she's checked in enough to really realize how empty the relationship is.
Yeah.
I think he is. She's not.
Yeah, that's well said. I would say, yeah.
So while he was toying with the idea of starting an affair with Yolanda, I don't think he really took the wife into consideration, because I would think in his head he's like, she's not gonna give a shit or understand the fact that I'm running around on her. Like,
I think she was so into what
she was into her nose.
Doing what she was doing, and he was into what she was doing in a sense that he knew that was her like passion and interest or hobby or what do you say, work, and he would watch her prepare for whatever makeup or I don't know what you call it. Thing she was doing or selling,
some kind of
promoting,
multi-level marketing thing or whatever.
Yeah, he would watch sort of from the side, and then, and she was so into what she was doing that she had no idea. She didn't. In the movie, we never saw her ask him about his work, which I found interesting.
Pretty self-absorbed.
And then, of course, they left the kid out of it, but I'm not saying that in a bad way. I mean, that's really good that they did that. They let her be a kid. And her passion was dance, and that's what they encouraged in her. I mean, not encouraged like in a, like, they wanted her to keep up with that and to be good at it and to be happy with it, and that her, that was her life.
He required a little bit of convincing, though, for her.
He did. He asked the dance teacher a number of times how good she was. That was interesting.
And it was just... I really don't think this movie gets enough credit, because it jostled pretty comfortably between him navigating his home life and these accelerating attacks that Ezekiel is perpetrating. Like what happens with that play where, they put on this play.
Oh, yeah.
Which was, as far as like, executing a plan, like, wow. I don't want to give away what. That's the hard part about talking about a movie, where, like, you don't want to take the steam out of actually seeing the movie. But
I will say that I've watched this movie before, but I can't really place, it's kind of actually all coming back to me just talking about it, but I can't figure out where or when I saw it.
You can tell us.
No, I think I want to email my aunt and ask her, because I think that we watched this. Like, she and my were really into our movies, and it was a really long time ago, but it was all coming back because watching it. And this was the whole reason I'm starting to talk, is because the scene that you're discussing with the play is one of the things that I remember from this movie, having seen it before. I remember the opening, the intro, which I think was really, like, grabs you.
It grabs you and, like...
But in a way you don't quite understand, I think. Like, I'm like, okay, I'll watch this movie, but it's like... I mean... Obviously, at the end, everything connects up and, like, it makes sense. But anyway,
definitely
I remember...
after a second viewing, it does.
Yeah, definitely.
With the glasses, the guy with the glasses at the beginning.
Yeah.
He's there later in the movie, but with a beard. And having seen it the first time, I'm like, I didn't know those were the same person. And especially...
Yep, that's...
You remember when he talked about the skin issue he had? He just scratched his shoulder at the beginning, but his face looked fine. And at the end of the movie, he's needing medication for the eczema, and his face is all fucked up. You remember that?
Yeah, and you know what? Thank you for explaining that just now, because I was definitely confused about some of that.
Because he had skin coming off because he had a skin condition.
Yeah, and who else was talking about that?
He said that at the beginning when Javier Bardem stopped him at the.
Oh, it was the detail of that gives it away, but the prescription pickup thing. right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because remember we were
It doesn't
watching.
really give it away because you got to see it to be like.
Okay.
When
But I remember when that happened because we were like, wait a second, what is this all about, a prescription? And then it all like connects and comes back. But those are things that I remember. I remember the intro. I remember there were some really graphic executions.
Yeah.
And yeah.
When they zeroed in on him.
It's just
And I'll tell you what, the thing with the medication, because they jumped to it like pretty. It was almost kind of an abrupt thing where he just said, start looking for people who are using or throwing out or have like packages of medication
that's what he said.
For eczema, and it's almost like off camera. He had the realization this was the same person. Maybe he uses something for the skin, but they don't say that. It's you have to deduce that.
That's true. Yeah.
Little bit of a narrative gap. It would have been because you have to go back over it a number of times. So the first time I saw it, I'm like, why is he looking for that all of a sudden? Unless there may have been. I almost want to watch it a third time just to be like, did you talk about this again? Like when they picked up those, they picked up that one girl in the leotard, the pink leotard. They started looking at her.
Oh yeah,
Why? Like I don't even know why they were like. Why were they looking at her? And it turns out she was a terrorist. But like why are you looking at her specifically?
Right.
Did I miss that?
No, I definitely it. There was no before. All of a sudden, they're in a car. They're
out.
Watching this lady in pink and tracking her every move. And then, well, we're not going to give it away, but things happen.
Yeah,
and you're like, how did they know that?
Yeah, it was just like, why? How is she a bystander? Or they're not staking out her. Maybe they're staking out somebody who's by her. And what's his name?
Sucra.
Sucra is like she's.
Or Sucro.
Yeah, she happens to be
Someone
Fallout.
Connected, yeah.
She's Fallout. She just happens to be in the neighborhood. She always goes for a run, and she wears leotard. Why am I not going to look at her? And his partner's a lady. He's like, well, yeah, look, I got to watch. Because, and then you find out, oh, she's not just somebody in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
That's who they're actually looking at. But why they're looking at her, I didn't really get.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't see that or understand that either, but
I think this is why, like when you're younger and you watch a movie, you kind of just take things for granted. But I don't know if it's a function of age or what, but now I'm definitely like, well, why this and why this? And they may have just been like a quick little piece of dialogue that you missed.
Yep.
But you have just enough for the story to make sense. But I'm kind of looking for those supporting pieces, which is why, like, we may watch it again in like 6 months. And there was another. Damn it. Well, I want so much to talk about what happens at the end. It's just agonizing because it's
like the very end.
Yeah, like the sentencing and
okay.
You know what I'm talking about, the darkness.
100%.
And the what I found. I think the key, there's a key line in this movie where, is it Yolanda who says, you think you know somebody well and then that they turn out to be a totally different person or something like that? And that applies.
Honestly, I don't remember.
That might have been in the trailer. About how Javier might have said that about how like the people that we think we know, like we don't know them at all.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah.
It's ringing a bell because I watched the trailer a couple of times.
And then when you get to the end of the movie, you're like, oh, that's the entire movie.
That's the entire movie. Yeah, I think that was in the trailer. It's to pull you in so you go see this movie.
And I mean, it works and it's not like it doesn't let you down in that regard because it's definitely very true. But what I found interesting was the raid scene when
the police go into his office?
Yeah. No, the raid, the very end. The hideout where they're staking out Ezekiel.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, I remember at the very end being like, I thought it was going to be this climactic, violent thing because I had not, even while watching the movie, you see him in like video and like through glass, so his face is kind of obscured just a little bit, and when he is finally cornered, he's just this like unassuming dude.
Unassuming, yeah.
And you're taken. I think I thought about this for like a week. I'm like, these people who can perpetrate like horrific crimes, just like Bin Laden. It's just some guy operating out of his house. Like you saw, did you ever see Zero Dark 30? Okay, so same kind of thing. Like, and that was an actual narrative in the CIA that he was operating out of a cave, and it took
I remember,
Chastain's character to be like, that's not possible to run a global network of interconnected cells from a mountain. He has to have computers. He has to have connection.
Right.
And okay, so it's a few steps up out of a cave, but he's sitting in his house somewhere.
Yeah.
With a computer and some files and he's running all this stuff, and he did it for years. And I think that's what what's funny about this is like each entity, the government and their revolutionaries, they're always trying to achieve some level of, I would say they're where everyone wants to be is in equilibrium, in a balanced state. But a revolutionary or a government is trying to pull things their way. And that inability to reach an equilibrium is where all the chaos comes from. It's where all the dying comes from. At the very, very end, we see Reyes, and I get, maybe it's a bit of a spoiler, he lives.
No, I don't think that's a spoiler.
No,
he should live.
Yeah. He goes to watch his daughter dance. And you and I watched an analysis of this.
Oh, yeah.
And we got, I got some point of view out of that more so than what I think I would have drawn from it. I just thought it was
it was very interesting to hear someone talk about,
especially when this reviewer said, there's a moment where he's watching his daughter and he becomes, he's enraptured, by her, and then disconnects.
I was just going to say, I think for a moment,
just for a second, he's like, oh, she's beautiful, she's so innocent, and then he just kind of drifts off. And honestly, I don't think I would have noticed that if somebody didn't point it out. Yeah,
I agree.
And I think he's kind of having this realization that, as you go through time, as you go through life, as a child, you have this innocence and wonder about all the things the world can bring, and then as you go through your life, you become an adult. You see, I don't want to say that's all ugly, but there's trepidation that you just don't witness as a kid. And people have wants and needs as a child, but like when you become an adult, those wants and needs can become, people can become exacting and brutal in their desire to attain those wants. Mm-hmm. Like some people just cross a line more readily than others. Mm-hmm. And as a child, you're so oblivious to that.
So oblivious.
Hey, before I forget, I forgot this last time.
Oh, recipe. Yeah. Good thing you remembered.
All right.
Well, before we finish, if anyone is questioning...
I'm not saying that I'm done with talking about the movie.
Oh, okay. Well, then you can... Okay.
But go ahead.
No, that's okay.
Oh, I'm going to actually need you
I'll finish.
to talk
Okay.
here because I think
I was just going to say that, in quotations, in conclusion, if you haven't seen this movie, you should definitely put it on your list to watch it soon. I think it's very, like we said, we might watch it again soon, like in the future, just to see it again from another perspective, if you will. Having watched it,
I just think it's so underrated.
It is very underrated, and a lot of online commentary says that, actually.
All right, honey-based recipe for the week. I don't necessarily have I'm going to go through this. Usually I pull this from a recipe in an ingredient list, but where I found this does not have that. So I'm just going to tell you what it is. It's a whipped ricotta toast with lemon and thyme honey. So it's going to sound kind of basic, but this would definitely work before a movie. And you know what? I'm going to say prosciutto goes with a lot of Latin American stuff. I know it's more of it's an Italian thing, but outside of the U.S., people appreciate prosciutto more than we do. So the photo I'm looking at is like a rye or a whole grain toast. So toast it, then butter it. Then, if you have whipped ricotta cheese, spread that on top. And then you're going to want...
whipped.
Whipped, yeah. Slice of lemon, but like thinly sliced. And you want to keep the rind in there. You can probably cut around the rind if you don't like eating the rind, but some people do.
Just cut it really thin.
Yeah, just cut it really thin. And then before you apply the honey, if you have thyme honey, I don't personally sell thyme honey, but you can find another option at heyhoney.biz. Shameless plug, as always. If you want to use thyme honey, it's real simple. You're just steeping thyme into a wildflower honey. Mm-hmm. So let it sit for about a week. You'll get more of a robust flavor, but I would just start out with maybe 8 ounces of it or 12 ounces of it. Mm-hmm. You're going to want it ground. Take the stems off. Submerge it, mix it slowly to get it in there, and then just let it sit at room temperature. So you're going to apply that. You're just going to pour that over the lemon. Mm-hmm. You can put little sprinkles of thyme on there if you want to accentuate it, and then cover it with 2 or 3 slices of prosciutto. Drizzle it with a little bit more honey. This is a full meal in and of itself. Citrus, ricotta, bread, meat. It's perfect.
You'll be full.
It's full. And that's the one sad thing about like talking about a recipe on the podcast. I can't show you how pretty this looks.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. It looks really, I love that. A+ presentation.
If only you ate pork. You know what? We're going to try it one day when we're out.
Okay.
You can try a little bit.
It always looks really good on the menu, I will say.
I think it probably isn't appealing to you because if you ever see it in a butchery, it's a big block of meat. It's like a ham bone.
Oh, well, that definitely doesn't sound... Yeah, but I've never seen it. The only way that I've seen it is how you described it earlier. Very thinly sliced on some fancy food. But yes, okay, we'll try it sometime. I'll try it sometime.
And if you don't care for thyme, honey, and prosciutto and ricotta would go well together, but if you don't have a thing for thyme, just remove it. just use regular wildflower clover and wildflower honey.
I'm sure that would be fine.
Let me see. What else? What else haven't I covered about this? I did want to tell you, and I think we touched on this the other day, that the movie is actually based on actual events and actual people.
We did touch on it very briefly. I can't believe it that I never heard of this. It's all very, very real.
Trying to think here if I'm trying to find within the Wikipedia where it refers to. Here we go. The film was shot in Porto, Portugal, and Quito, Ecuador. Oh, that's another thing that I was going to talk about. What was the other language that was used in this? The Indian dialect?
Oh, Quechua.
Quechua. Kind of a bummer. We rented this from what streaming service?
I think Amazon.
There's a scene where Javier or Rejas goes back to his original hometown. Mm-hmm. He travels there by truck, takes several days, and he bumps into like somebody from school, someone who is maybe a criminal, and they have a conversation who gives him a clue as to who Ezekiel might be, I believe.
Yeah, but I forgot about this moment.
Yeah, and the guy they speak Quechua, but that scene is not translated. At least in the Amazon streamed product, it's not.
Yeah, I remember you commenting about that.
So we're watching this, and you can't pull up captions. We're like, I don't know what the fuck they're saying. But I know it's integral. You know what? I'll bet you that was the scene where they talked about who Ezekiel was and the skin problem. That would make sense. That would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, wow. Good job. Yeah.
Because that was where I think he was drawing the connection between his old life when he first got out of law and became the guard at the help me out here.
At the little checkpoint station?
At the checkpoint. Because that was in or around his hometown. And I believe that person, if I'm doing this from memory from 20-some years ago, because it was translated in the theater. I believe that guy said something about how this guy has a skin issue. He has to take something.
Yeah, I could see that.
Because when he came back, you remember I think it was after he came back, I think, that the army had raided the police's offices and like took all their stuff. And when Rejas executed the raid, when he organized the raid, that was another thing, is that when Sucre and his partner busted that girl, the army was right on top of them.
Right.
But Rejas was able to organize a full police raid with a full SWAT team without the army getting involved. When he came back from his trip, I believe that's when the army raided his office. And after that, when he's trying to zero in on who Ezekiel is, he says, we got to look for somebody who's like, you got to go through the garbage and see if you can find any medication for a skin issue.
Ah, good job.
I think.
We
didn't see. You know what we get? If we watch it again, we should see if we can get it from someplace that has
all the subtitles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
was really interesting. That's a really good point.
I'll bet you that's where it is.
Yeah. That makes very much sense.
So let me see here. The film was shot in Porto, Portugal, and Quito, Ecuador. Original theatrical release included a quick scene, 2 or 3 seconds of a map of Lima, Peru, to indicate that this was in Peru. The scene was deleted from the DVD release. A lamppost sign reads, when I hear the word culture, I reach for my pistol. This is a quotation usually misattributed to Nazi leader Hermann Göring.
That's why you mentioned him the other day.
Yeah. Historical biases. Here it is. The story is inspired by the Peruvian Maoist guerrilla organization Shining Path. Its leader, Abriel Guzman, who is known by his nom de guerre, President Gonzalo. That's who Ezekiel was based on. Was captured in an apartment above a ballet studio in the capital Lima in 1992. The ballet teacher Yolanda was based on Maritza Garrido Lica, a woman in whose apartment Guzman was found. Bardem's character was inspired by Benedicto Jimenez and General Antonio Quintin Vidal, the leading figures responsible for Guzman's capture. Tristan Calderon is based on, for anyone who's listening who's getting upset, I don't speak Spanish, Vladimiro Montesinos, the de facto head of the Peruvian National Intelligence Service, who had also been an attorney for drug dealers. Yeah, God, they ripped this story right from the headlines.
Yeah, that's amazing to me.
So Shining Path, I'm going to spare you reading all of this, but it was the Communist Party of Peru, and they were brutal in their execution of their trying to pass their mission onto the public. First launched as the People's War in 1980, the Shining Path's goal was to overthrow the government through guerrilla warfare and replace it with new democracy. And their party flag looks identical to the Union of Soviet Socialist Republic flag. Oh. That's the same flag.
You know, I looked at that earlier and wondered where
That's the same flag.
Recognized it from.
The Shining Path believed that establishing a dictatorship of the proletariat, including a cultural revolution and eventually sparking a world revolution, they could arrive at full communism. It's basically the Latin version of the Russian USSR. Mm-hmm. The representative stated that the then existing social countries and revisionist, and that Shining Path was the vanguard of the world communist movement. The Shining Path's ideology and tactics have influenced their Maoist insurgent groups, such as the Communist Party of Nepal and the Revolutionary Internationalist Movement affiliated organizations. Well, that's the funny thing, is like their kind of guerrilla methods at recruiting never really, I think what they don't really recognize is that they're not really great at assembling people en masse. I mean...
Yeah, everything was carried out, I don't want to say individually, but like with a small group of people.
Like the USSR did it, they didn't do it like that. Well, I shouldn't say that because... I'm not going to turn this into a history podcast, but the Bolsheviks were, I always flip-flop these. The Bolsheviks and was it the Imperials? I mean, the royal family was pretty much murdered in their home, and then, their guerrillas just kind of took over. I think they had a larger group, but they took over and then just instituted their own government, but they went right for the head of the snake.
Mm-hmm. I only know a little bit about this history, so I can't really comment.
They went after the royal family and they killed everybody, and then just that's how they took over. But what we had said before we lost our connection was the thing about communism versus democracy and capitalism is socialism and communism really kind of incisors like a person's will or desire to excel at anything. You know, the idea that everyone can work with one another and for one another is a great idea, but it assumes that there's not a piece in every one of us to do better and to make more for yourself. And that's just part of the human condition. Like you can't excise it. You can't remove it. It's just people want to have something that's theirs, and they want to have a skill that they can build and do better at and excel at, and people want to achieve. And I think that's where the socialists and the communists just kind of, they fall flat. I'm not saying that the capitalists execute it perfectly, because there's tons of inequality. There's a giant gap between the rich and the poor now, but I think that's the one thing that capitalism offers is, you know, even though it's going to be hard for you to ascend, it is possible. But their will is a big part of it. You have to exercise your will to do better. I'm not saying it's available to everybody, but I think that's something that just appeals to people who desire anything. If you want this, if you want to be better at this, if you want to attain more, there are places where you can. America is one of them. But if you move into a democratic society, you can have that. If you're part of a communistic environment, they sell you the idea that it's going to be blissful and everyone's going to work together. But in reality, they all end up as dictatorships, every one of them. And there's a few powerful people at the top, and they feed you shit, and they tell you it's good for everybody. So I loved watching this play out in the narrative. It was just, I can't talk highly enough about this movie. Totally underrated gem. I know we say a lot of good things about movies on this show, but you should watch it. This is a top one. I liked it a lot. So, all right, we're done. I got to eat.
Okay.
All right, everybody. Till next time, we'll get back to a blacklist, I promise. Thanks for listening. Hugs and kisses.
Bye.